Criterion podcast. I'm your host, Michelangelo Marenko, and today I'm here with Dr. Leslie Martin. Today we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions, and we're going to see the different aspects of it. So, Dr. Martin, please tell me more about yourself.
Well, I'm a health psychologist. I've been here at La Sierra since 1996, and I study doctor patient relationships and how those are related to health outcomes, and also personality and psychosocial factors and how those relate to health and longevity.
Oh, that's great. So, please tell me about why do most people not really follow through on their New Year's resolutions?
I think there's a few reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that people choose things that are too big or too difficult. And so to actually make it happen is a lot more complicated than they anticipate. Another thing that can tend to get in the way is social pressure. So you might have a reasonable plan and you might be able to implement it if you didn't have any interference, but a lot of times peers or family will kind of get in the way with their ideas about what you should be eating or drinking or doing.
Yeah, it can be very challenging to follow these different, these high rigorous resolutions, especially if they don't really have a milestone step by step basis to cover that. So, what do you think are the challenges people face in these resolutions that make them fail?
Well, one of the things you actually just mentioned, and that is the failure to break things down into more manageable chunks. So there's a lot of data out there that actually shows that even if you do have a big and maybe challenging goal for yourself, if you can break it up into smaller bit goals that you can potentially be experiencing some success, that'll improve your self-efficacy or your sense of, yeah, I can do this, and motivate you to keep going. That's actually really helpful. But most of the time, people will commit to the big thing and not really think about the stepwise process of exactly how to get there.
So, what tips would you give to students who want to be consistent with their New Year's resolutions?
Well, I hate to say it, but the first thing I would say is probably not even to frame it as a New Year's resolution. I think that when we think of something as a New Year's resolution, it comes around once a year. And if you fall off the wagon, if you get off course, then you kind of feel like you've blown it, and there might be an impetus to just wait until next year and then start over, and that's a really long time to wait.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one thing is to focus on what the overall goal is, regardless of when you start it and what your steps are to get there. But then I think too, trying to select goals that are somewhat, I don't know, enjoyable for you to do. And I know that's not always the case. I think of like flossing teeth. That's probably not ever going to be something fun for anyone. And sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. But on some of these other things, we can, let's say you're choosing to be more physically active, pick an activity that you actually would enjoy, even if it's maybe less rigorous than something else that you feel like is the thing you should be doing because it's going to get you more out of breath or whatever. Doing the thing you enjoy is much more likely to be sustainable. So, as much as you can make it fun or make it engaging for yourself, you're more likely to stay with it.
That's great, yeah, because it makes sense if it's something you enjoy, even when it does get difficult, you can pull through and be consistent with it.
Yeah. Another thing that I think too can be really useful for people, especially if they're doing long-term things, is to keep track of progress, and that might, it might be with a Fitbit or it might be on paper. It could mean a bunch of different things, but to keep track of that, because then you can see the trajectory over time. And if you do have a failure or a lapse, you can look back and say, oh, okay, yeah, I kind of screwed up this weekend, but hey, look where I was 3 months ago and look where I am now. And that helps you to see that ongoing positive pattern even in the face of smaller failures.
So, what are your thoughts on like apps nowadays? We live in the 21st century that could help benefit students, such as exercise apps, for example.
I think it very much depends on the individual. For some people, those are going to be great. You can compete with friends or even people you don't even know online to, get more steps or do this or that. You can earn prizes and points that you can use to buy equipment or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of different things. And so if that appeals to you, absolutely, it's a great thing. For some people, that's really unappealing. They don't want to have to track something regularly, or they don't want to know in that much detail, or they don't want to wear a Fitbit or whatever the case may be. So I think to find what is tailored best to your strengths and your preferences is really the key. So if you like the apps, go for it. There actually are some really great ones out there. But if that's not your thing, that's okay. It's not like you have to use an app.
And if a student is willing to use an app, what are some great dietary and exercise apps you would recommend to students?
Well, since I am not an app person, I'm the wrong person to ask because I've never used a fitness or a dietary app of any kind. You can, well, you on the podcast, you can't see, but I have a paper calendar and I write down everything and I manually cross it off, which is very rewarding to me. So at home, I have a calendar for the whole year and I circle the days that I do workouts. And my personal challenge for this year, which is not a New Year's resolution per se, but I like to do a challenge every year. So since it's 2019, 2019, I'm swimming 201.9 miles this year. And so I'm tracking that. Um, but I just write it down. So I would say explore, go on Google and just type in keywords to look for what you want and find what's looks good or what's cheap or free or I don't know.
Yeah, I know it's one app that I used in the past called Lose It, and it's a free app
Okay.
that helps keep a dietary track of your calorie intake. So it makes you like keep your calorie budget at
Okay.
a low. So it's pretty nice.
Well, and what I've heard from people on those kinds of apps is that it's really nice if you can find one that has a lot of things already pre-programmed into it because honestly, if you have to be putting in, all of the nutritional information or even just calorie counts for foods you're eating, it probably could get pretty tedious. But if some of them are already included and you could just select them and then say what your portion size is and it will calculate that for you, it would make it a lot easier.
Yeah, they're very customizable, and that's what's really great about these modern day apps. So, what have you done in the past to be consistent with your New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, so I've never really been a New Year's resolution kind of person, but I am always trying to improve stuff. And so the
Hmm.
two things I'm doing right now, one which started actually a little bit before Christmas, is I decided I really need to drink more water. I drink a lot of coffee and I drink other things, but I don't drink a lot of just plain water. And hey, our bodies need water.
Yeah,
So I'm
and that could be
trying.
difficult throughout the day.
Trust me, it can. There's my Nalgene right there. So I'm trying to drink
Yeah.
2 Nalgenes of water per day. And the thing is, I have not done it every day. But some days I have. And even on the days when I haven't done it, I've drunk more water than I otherwise would have. So I see that as a positive, but I'm not beating myself up over the days that I didn't drink it. The other thing I have for this year is my swimming challenge. I think sometimes for a whole year, like one year I did a challenge where I was going to run 1,000 miles, which I did, and that was really fun. But I also sometimes do monthly challenges. So you can see this all kind of is centering mostly on fitness for
Yeah.
me. And so if you have fitness goals, like it doesn't have to be a New Year's resolution, do a monthly challenge. I do with students in the department, well, if they're interested, not that many of them are, but we'll do something for a month. Like one time it was plank. And so we started with 5 seconds of plank on day one. Day two, we did 10 seconds. Day three, we did 15 seconds.
Oh,
And
I
by the
like
end, we
that.
were up to like 5 minutes of plank,
Oh,
which was tough,
wow.
but we did it. And then we moved on. Like we did a push up one, we did a sit up one, we've done all kinds of stuff. So that's kind of fun too. And you're done with it in a month. It's a challenge. You stick it out, you feel good about it. And then maybe someone else in the group gets to pick the next challenge.
Yeah, that'd be really great if we had like those challenges, kind of like how last year has the yoga
Mm-hmm.
hours. We could have like a plank challenge for a month, or then even like another month like
Yeah.
a swimming challenge. So that would be very great for students in general. So what do you think overall would you like? What would be the best advice you would give to students who would want to be consistent with their resolutions?
I I would encourage people to break down whatever the big goal is into manageable steps. I would encourage people to keep track of their progress toward those things and to be creative in thinking about how you can reward yourself or how you can make it fun. Um, some of the apps that we were talking about earlier, some of those have built in rewards. Maybe it's just the acclaim that you get because you got the most steps. My brother's super into that, and he's like, he'll just enter his steps like at the last minute before midnight, hoping that no one else will then get enough steps. But it's
Hmm.
because he wants to win that day's step challenge. So finding what's fun, finding what's rewarding for you, and then not being afraid to let something go if it turns out it's not right for you, and adopt a different approach. I think a lot of times we get locked in. It's like, okay, I said I'm going to the gym and lifting weights, 3 times a week for an hour each time. Well, if you're hating that, you're eventually not going to do it at all. So it's okay to say, this isn't working for me, and what I actually want to do is something else, and then try that. So I think keeping it flexible is really key because ultimately it's not about doing a certain number of push-ups or a certain number of hours of in the gym or whatever, practicing music or whatever it might be. It's about making improvements to yourself. So however that happens, I think it's great to be creative and flexible.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing why most people fail their resolutions, because they put high expectations to themselves, and they don't take, like you said, the slow progressive steps, milestone steps to reach that goal.
And we're very hard
Yeah.
line. It's like, okay, I messed up now, so I failed. Okay, done with that, moving on. Well, it doesn't have to be. You could try a different approach.
Definitely. In terms of diets, like I know like nowadays there's so many diets out there. We
Yes.
have the keto diet, the paleo diet,
Yeah.
and I know this one called now intermittent fasting that all my friends are
Hmm.
doing. What are your thoughts on like all these different like diets nowadays compared to like back then when it was just like people would just be eating
Eating normal
whole
food in normal
foods,
amounts.
yeah, normal
Yeah.
amounts.
Well, I think there's some advice out here, and I think it certainly didn't begin with Michael Pollan, but I think he said it really well, and I won't say his words exactly, but he basically said, eat all kinds of things, eat in moderation, mostly plant based. And I think that's good advice. Like, you don't have to eliminate any particular thing from your diet. The most quote unquote healthy thing on earth, if you're eating too much of it, it's probably not healthy. So you want a variety.
Hmm.
You want not to have too many saturated fats. You shouldn't be eating a lot of animal products. I'm vegan. I think you shouldn't be eating any animal products. But honestly, from a dietary and health perspective, some are okay, but it shouldn't be a large proportion of your diet. A lot of fiber, a lot of whole foods, avoid the processed stuff. And I think the intermittent fasting is not at all a bad idea. But again, people are quite variable. So some people, they really need something that's a little more steady in terms of caloric intake. I can go 24 hours without eating, and I'm not going to be shaking. I'm not going to have like low blood sugar or something where I can't
If I don't
function.
go out with like 12 hours, I'll be dying,
Yeah, see, so
honestly.
so you have to know that about yourself and realize, okay, so if I'm doing intermittent fasting, I'm only going to do that for 10 hours or whatever,
Hmm.
and I can't go beyond that. Someone else, they might be able to go 15, and maybe that's good for them. So it's a matter of finding that perfect combination for you. But I think when people try to avoid certain foods, um, again, you feel deprived, and then you end up messing up. You eat some of it, and you think, oh well, I obviously can't do that, and so you quit trying. So I think always trying to move in a positive direction. But the fads, I mean, a keto diet, you don't want to be doing that to your system, I don't think.
Yeah,
You We need carbs and we need fat. Like, we need all of this
we really
stuff.
do, because
And
it's good. I even heard how carbs is good for brain function as well,
absolutely, your brain uses
and energy.
glucose, and so if
Yeah.
you're, especially if you're a student and you need to be thinking, you need some carbs.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And thank you so much, everyone, for watching.